Saif al-Islam Gaddafi, the son of the long-time former Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi, had been killed in Libya.
Enduring a similar fate as his father, Saif al-Islam was gunned down this Tuesday.
The son of Libya's former dictator Muammar Gaddafi has just been assassinated. Saif al-Islam Gaddafi, the man who was once groomed to lead Libya and who survived 15 years of chaos after his father's regime collapsed, was shot dead by 4 masked men who broke into his house in Zintan on February 3, 2026. No group has claimed responsibility, and in a country where 2 rival governments fight for power while foreign nations pull the strings, finding out who ordered the killing might be impossible.
October 20th, 2011, Muammar Gaddafi, the man who ruled Libya with an iron fist for 42 years, was hunted down by NATO-backed rebels. The footage of his final moments spread across the world. He was dragged through the streets, beaten and killed in circumstances that still remain unclear to this day. Western leaders celebrated like they'd just won the World Cup. Hillary Clinton appeared on camera and couldn't hide her excitement. She laughed and said those now infamous words, "We came, we saw, he died."
Yes, we came, we saw, he died. Did it have anything to do with your visit? Oh, I'm sure it did.
The journalist beside her laughed too, a chilling moment of triumph over death. Barack Obama stood before the world and called it a victory for freedom. He promised that Libya could now finally determine its own destiny. A new democratic Libya, he said.
The people of Libya now have the opportunity to determine their own destiny. A new democratic Libya.
The Western media followed his script. Headlines declared the end of dictatorship. They spoke of democracy, progress, and hope. But what came next didn't follow their fairy tale. The moment Gaddafi fell, Libya fell with him. Everything that once worked just stopped. Government institutions that had run the country for decades vanished overnight. Ministries dissolved, office buildings emptied, the National Army shattered into dozens of militias, each carving out their own piece of territory, flying their own flags, and declaring themselves the true guardians of Libya. The West had promised liberation, but what they left behind was a nation in absolute ruins. Libya today has open slave markets. Human beings are bought and sold like cattle in a country that once had one of the highest living standards in Africa. Smugglers and human traffickers prey on desperate migrants trying to reach Europe. Men and women are traded for cash in the shadows. Rival tribes and militias battle for control of oil fields and cities. Everyone's dreaming of power and profit. And in all this chaos, something even darker crept in. ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and other jihadist groups that would never have dared exist under Gaddafi's rule now thrive in the cracks of this broken nation. While the West congratulated itself for removing a dictator, Libya burned. The same nations that couldn't stay out of Libya's business suddenly turned their backs. They watched as the country fractured into pieces, as terrorists rose, as militias ruled. As the dream of democracy turned into an absolute nightmare. They stayed silent when electricity vanished and blackouts consumed entire cities. They said nothing when hospitals ran out of medicine and universities closed their doors. The so-called liberation had turned Libya into a graveyard of promises. Here's what this tells me. They never cared about Libya, not its people, not its democracy, not its future. Their mission was never liberation. It was elimination. To remove a man who stood in the way of their plans. Today, many Libyans look back on the Gaddafi era with something Western media can't quite explain. Nostalgia. They remember a time when life felt secure, when streets were safe, when healthcare was free, when education was guaranteed, when housing was affordable, when fuel was cheaper than bottled water. They remember a Libya that stood on its own feet, not one begging for aid or divided by war. And now, from the ashes of that destroyed nation, a familiar name returns. Saif al-Islam Gaddafi, the son of the man the world tried to erase. During his father's reign, Saif was seen as the moderate, the educated one, the bridge between Libya and the West. He had a degree in engineering science from Al-Fayda University in Tripoli. He later got a PhD from the London School of Economics. He spoke fluent English. He was calm and articulate. To the West, he was the friendly face of the Gaddafi regime, the reformer who could modernize Libya. But when the revolution came and his father's world crumbled, Saif didn't run. He stood his ground. He faced the rebels and foreign forces head-on and declared, "We fight here in Libya. We die here in Libya."
Those words would echo for years, a vow of loyalty, a warning to those who thought the Gaddafi legacy was dead. But fate had other plans. Despite his loyalty and defiance, Saif couldn't save his father or Libya. After Gaddafi's brutal death, Saif fled south, racing through the desert toward Niger. But before he could cross the border, his journey ended. In November 2011, near the remote town of Ubari, rebels from his own tribe ambushed and captured him. He was paraded as a prisoner, tried via video link by a Tripoli court for alleged crimes committed during the 2011 uprising. The International Criminal Court joined in, accusing him of crimes against humanity. In July 2015, a Tripoli court sentenced him to death by firing squad in absentia. The charges: inciting civil war, genocide, abuse of power, ordering the killing of demonstrators, bringing in mercenaries to suppress the revolution. The son of Gaddafi had become the symbol of everything the new Libya wanted to erase. Then, silence. Years passed. The world forgot his name. Until 2017, when the authorities from Libya's eastern faction suddenly pardoned him. He walked free, and then he vanished again. No public sightings, no statements, only whispers in the desert that Saif al-Islam was alive. Then in July 2021, he resurfaced in the most dramatic way possible. A video interview with the New York Times titled, "Gaddafi's son is alive, and he wants to take Libya back." In the interview, Saif appeared older. He had a graying beard. He wore a black kameez embroidered with golden motifs and a black turban, but he was not defeated. He denied rumors of his death. He said the armed groups who had kidnapped him had freed themselves from the illusion of the revolution and are now supporting him. He described his years in captivity and his vision for Libya's future. He said the country needed saving, not from outsiders, but from itself. From corruption, from division, from foreign control. He spoke like a man reborn, determined to reclaim what was lost. And then came the bombshell. Saif al-Islam Gaddafi announced he would run for president. Elections were set for December 24, 2021. A symbolic date meant to mark Libya's rebirth. For the first time in a decade, the son of Gaddafi was officially back, ready to step out of his father's shadow and into the storm of history once more. In that interview, his words carried the weight of both defiance and destiny. "Now I am a free man," he said, "and I am arranging to return to the political scene." He claimed he'd used his exile wisely, studying the chaos that had consumed Libya and the Middle East, quietly rebuilding his father's old political network, the Green Movement, the same movement that once held Libya together under a single banner. He wasn't sure if he would run for president, but he made one thing clear. His movement could restore what Libya had lost: unity, stability, pride. His campaign slogan struck a nerve across the country. "Politicians have given you nothing but suffering. It's time to return to the past." And he didn't stop there. His tone hardened as he described the decay of the nation. "They have raped and humiliated our country," he said. "We have no money, no security, and no life. You go to a gas station and there's no fuel. We export oil and gas to Italy. We power half of Italy, while our own people live in darkness." He paused, then added, "What is happening is beyond failure. It is a farce." It was more than a statement. It was an accusation. A declaration that the Libya built by his father had been sold, stripped, and shattered, and that only a Gaddafi could rebuild it. At the time, Libya was divided into two parallel administrations that still fight for power today. One in the east, based in Tobruk, the other in the west, based in Tripoli. In between, they had to deal with an Islamist insurgency that had established a small caliphate on the coast. Even the jihadist threat didn't unite them. Successive UN-sponsored agreements cushioned the blows and halted hostilities with ceasefires, but they proved incapable of resolving the protracted political stalemate. Saif al-Islam eventually registered for those elections. He was the first nationally recognized candidate to register, but the elections never happened on time. In fact, they still haven't happened. The Government of National Unity in Tripoli and the House of Representatives in Tobruk cannot agree on a joint electoral law to put the process back on track. Libya's political elite remains entrenched in power in the absence of a legal framework that would allow the vote to take place. One Libyan activist puts it plainly: Libya again finds itself with two governments, neither of which has been elected or chosen by Libyans, but both of which are the product of continuous misdirection by corrupt politicians unwilling to let go of their positions of power. The lack of security and the deterioration of social services have made many Libyans lose faith in the political class.
Some have staged protests and riots. This creates the perfect breeding ground for the emergence of a new profile to unite the discontent. Someone perceived as a leader capable of leaving the post-revolutionary crisis behind, and the name being chanted on the streets and in certain circles? Saif al-Islam himself. He's popular among those nostalgic for the Gaddafi regime, a spectrum made up of former officials, clans, and communities that supported Gaddafi, especially those in Tripoli's so-called Green Belt, which has a large demographic weight. According to a crisis group analyst, Saif retains some degree of support in Libya, but no one knows the real size of his support. There have been no elections in Libya for years, and Saif al-Islam remains a controversial figure. His support base is highly mobilized, but he doesn't seem to enjoy much support from the rest of society. While Saif still lives in secret, unconfirmed reports suggest he's serious about reuniting Libya. Sources say he's currently meeting tribal leaders and forming alliances, positioning himself as a national figure. Whether through elections or raw political maneuvering, Saif appears ready to challenge Libya's fractured state. In November 2024, reports emerged that Saif claimed a landslide victory in municipal elections. In a tweet, he expressed dissatisfaction with the current government in Tripoli, led by Abdelhamid Dbabe, accusing it of prolonging the crisis to stay in power at the expense of Libyan interests. He said, "Salvation is coming to Libya," signaling a new hope with the return of his political movement. In April 2024, Saif flexed his muscles in a dramatic show of force. A column of around 200 armed vehicles and dozens of armed men marched through the streets of Zintan, an important city in western Libya about 120 kilometers south of Tripoli. A man claiming to speak on behalf of the Zintan tribes read a statement surrounded by soldiers in uniform and civilians in traditional clothing. "We, the social military forces and security of Zintan, affirm our support for the candidacy in the presidential elections of Saif al-Islam Gaddafi because he enjoys broad popular support, has strong leadership qualities, is sincerely committed to the Libyan nation, and has extensive political experience." The video showed vehicles armed with cannons and machine guns. It was a clear message. Saif has backing, real backing, armed backing. To some, Saif is a savior who would complete what his father began. To others, he's nothing but a man riding the waves of his father's influence. Some, especially those who participated in the Libyan revolution, fear he would retaliate if he becomes leader. But his return to power won't be easy.
Without a doubt, it will be challenged by General Khalifa Haftar, the powerful eastern-based commander of the Libyan National Army. Haftar is also casting himself as the person who can bring stability to Libya. In 2018, he described Saif as naive in politics, adding it would be illogical for him to run an election since he lacks popular support. But Haftar may not be the best judge of Gaddafi's popularity. Professor Yehudit Ronen, a Middle East studies professor at Bar-Ilan University, says some segments of Libyan society would like to see a Gaddafi running Libya again. For those who benefited during Gaddafi's rule but have since been relegated to the margins, Saif's arrival means they can return to privilege and influence. They come from western Libya, from Tripoli, from the army, and from tribal militias that cooperated with his father for 4 decades. Support for Saif is also strong in the south of the country. Ronen adds that after the bitter experiences of recent years, even many who opposed his father's rule would now be willing to go along with the son they despised as a means of attaining order and greater security. "There is terrible violence, kidnappings, and ransom demands," she said. "A person goes out in the morning and doesn't know if he will return in the afternoon. The roads are dangerous. There is no governance. There is no orderly economy. Oil exports haven't returned to what they were and don't bring in the foreign currency needed to restore health, sewage, and other systems. It is an extremely difficult situation in the east, west, and south." Within this climate, there's nostalgia among some who oppose the regime and hated Gaddafi's son. They're saying, yes, it was a repressive regime where people disappeared and went to prison for their political beliefs, but there was personal security. So clearly, Saif has support. But beside opposition from Libya's divided leadership, Saif still has to deal with the accusations from the International Criminal Court. The ICC accuses him of war crimes and crimes against humanity for his alleged role in suppressing protests in 2011. Legally, his candidacy for any leadership position should be impossible. But here's the reality. Libya's current situation is anything but legalistic. There's no unified judiciary, no single government recognized by all Libyans, no mechanism strong enough to enforce an international warrant. Besides, for many Libyans, the ICC indictment doesn't matter. They view it as an external instrument of political control.
After all, who did the ICC prosecute when NATO bombed Libya and killed citizens? Doesn't that equal a crime against humanity? Why did the ICC ignore the militias who committed brutal crimes against prisoners? Clearly, the ICC is seen as a tool of Western control used to oppress and prosecute those deemed a threat to the West. So any move Saif makes toward taking control in Libya would be welcomed by many Libyans. The only question is, will the West sit back and watch as Gaddafi's son returns to power? Well, it's not really clear, but we do know the West fears anything that threatens their interests. If Saif fully follows in his father's footsteps, if he tries to nationalize resources, resist Western influence, and rebuild Libya as an independent power, the West will absolutely not sit back. They'll do everything to ensure he never returns, including pressuring the ICC to enforce its indictment, or funding opposition groups, or worse. Because here's the truth they don't want you to know. Libya was never about democracy or human rights. It was about control. Control of oil, control of resources, control of a strategic location in North Africa. Gaddafi was removed because he refused to play by their rules. He was building an independent African currency backed by gold. He was funding African development projects. He was a threat to Western economic dominance in the region. And now his son might finish what he started. That's why they're scared. Not because Saif is a dictator, but because he represents everything they tried to destroy. According to Libya specialists, Saif's return isn't completely unthinkable, but it's still uncertain. Imaden Badi, a Libya researcher at the Atlantic Council, told France 24 back in 2021, "It is not completely unthinkable. On the other hand, it is still too early today." He noted that Saif's first media appearance was reserved for the New York Times, a publication not typically read by the Libyan public. The message was addressed to a foreign audience and particularly to countries most likely to accept a return to business for his clan. Indeed, Saif remains a political option that may interest some foreign actors in the Libyan conflict, including Russia. In January 2024, reports indicated that Saif was expected to attend the Brazzaville summit in February, marking his first international departure since the overthrow of his father's regime. The summit, organized under the African Union, aimed to facilitate Libyan reconciliation. His participation was seen as breaking psychological and political barriers, paving the way for direct dialogue. In July 2024, Saif's political team expressed approval of outcomes from a Cairo meeting between representatives from the House of Representatives and the High Council of State. They welcomed moves to overcome the political deadlock, noting that the current political deadlock only serves those clinging to power at the expense of the higher interests of the Libyan people. So what happens next? No one knows for sure. Libya remains divided. Elections remain postponed. Saif remains in the shadows, building alliances and waiting for his moment. His family is scattered. 3 of his brothers were killed during the 2011 conflict. His sister Aisha and brother Muhammad reportedly live in Oman. His brother Hannibal is detained in Lebanon. His brother Al-Sadi lives in Turkey with no declared political activity. His mother, Safia Furkash, lives in Cairo. Saif is the only family member still seeking to return to power. He reportedly moves between cities in southern Libya, hoping circumstances will allow him to run in elections. According to his lawyer, he has contacts with all the leaders and is based in Libya, though he's never been publicly seen in the eastern and western regions since his release. But one thing is clear. The ghost of Gaddafi has not been buried. It's rising, and whether you see Saif as a savior or a threat, his return to the political scene has already changed everything. Libya's story isn't over. It's just entering its next chapter, and this time a Gaddafi might be writing it. Hit that subscribe button because this story is far from finished.